For 133 days, he was lost in the Atlantic Ocean, completely alone and drifting with no way to call for help. And somehow, he survived. In 1942, during World War II, a Chinese sailor named Poon Lim was working aboard a British merchant ship called the SS Ben Lomond. The ship had left Cape Town and was crossing the Atlantic Ocean toward New York. At that time, these waters were extremely dangerous. German submarines moved silently beneath the surface, waiting for ships like his. There were no safe routes and no guarantees. Every journey across the Atlantic carried real risk, and the crews knew it. But they had no choice because supplies still had to move and ships had to keep sailing. Then one day, without warning, everything changed. A torpedo struck the ship, and the impact was sudden and powerful. There was almost no time to react and no real chance to prepare. The ship began to sink almost immediately. Crew members rushed to escape, but the force of the ocean pulled everything downward. Lifeboats disappeared. Equipment vanished. Within minutes, the ship was gone. Poon Lim was thrown into the water, alone and surrounded by floating debris. There was no land in sight, no voices, and no sign of other survivors anywhere around him. For hours, he drifted in the open ocean, holding on to anything that could keep him afloat. The sun was rising higher. The water stretched endlessly in every direction. Then he saw something. A wooden life raft, floating not far from him. He swam toward it with everything he had left, and somehow he managed to climb aboard. That moment changed everything. Inside the raft, he found supplies. Not much, but enough to matter. There were biscuits, fresh water, and a small amount of chocolate. There were also signal flares and basic tools, and a canvas cover to block the sun. At first, it felt like survival might be possible. He was no longer in the water. He had food, he had water, he had something to hold on to. But reality quickly set in. The raft had no sail, no engine, and no way to control where it was going. He was simply drifting, fully at the mercy of the ocean. The current carried him away from shipping routes, further into isolation. At first he believed rescue would come, that someone would search for survivors, but no ships appeared. Days passed, then more days. The horizon never changed. The silence grew heavier, and slowly his supplies began to run out. That's when everything shifted. Survival was no longer about waiting. It became a daily challenge, a problem he had to solve again and again. He started building tools, using whatever he could find. He removed small metal parts from a flashlight, bent them into fishing hooks, used rope from the raft as a line. At first he caught nothing, but he kept trying, adjusting, learning, improving, until one day it worked. He caught a fish. From that moment, he had a new source of food. Every catch meant another day. Every success meant more time. He even managed to catch birds that landed on the raft. Nothing was wasted. Water remained the biggest challenge. He could not drink seawater, so he had to rely on rain whenever it came. When clouds appeared, he prepared himself carefully, collecting every drop he could. But rain did not come often, so he found another way. He discovered that fish contained small amounts of usable fluid. It wasn't much, but it helped him survive. The ocean tested him constantly. Storms arrived without warning, waves crashed over the raft. At times it felt like everything would be lost. To stay safe, he tied himself to the raft, so he wouldn't be swept away during the night. Sleep was never comfortable. Only brief moments of rest. The sun burned during the day. The heat was relentless. Then came the cold nights, long, silent, and empty. There was no escape from the environment. Sharks began to appear. They circled beneath him, drawn by movement, always there, always watching. One day, he managed to catch a small shark. It was dangerous, but it provided food, and more importantly, it proved something. He could survive anything. Time slowly lost its meaning. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months without any clear sense of progression. There were no markers, no calendar, only the constant need to survive. To stay focused, he created routines. Fishing, checking equipment, watching the horizon. Keeping his mind active was essential. At one point, he noticed a ship far in the distance, and for a moment, hope returned. He tried to signal it with everything he had, doing everything possible to be seen. For a moment, it seemed like rescue was close, but then a storm moved in. The waves rose, visibility disappeared, and the ship was gone. He was alone again, but this time something felt different. He had already survived so much. Giving up was no longer an option. Then he started noticing more birds than before, circling above the water. The color of the sea was changing as well, and it didn't feel the same anymore. These were signs that land might be close. After 133 days at sea, he finally saw land. The coastline of Brazil. It was distant, but real. Soon after, fishermen spotted his raft. They approached slowly, not knowing what they would find. And then they saw him. Alive. After more than 4 months alone at sea, his journey finally came to an end. He had lost weight, but he could still stand and walk on his own. His survival became one of the most remarkable stories ever recorded. In the end, it wasn't luck that saved him, but the decision to keep going.